What if the first kings on earth never claimed to create their throne, but only to receive it as inheritance? Under the ruins of southern Mesopotamia, where once irrigation channels etched order into disorder, clay tablets still hold a memory more ancient than any empire. 4 millennia ago, each wedge impressed into damp earth bore the burden of inheritance, records not of victory, but of continuity, of entering a world already surveyed, already ruled, already whole. So, before the quiet grows deeper, pause to like this video and subscribe, only if you're pulled toward histories that challenge what we assume about origins. And if you're still here, drop a comment sharing where you are and what time it is now. I'd love to picture this stillness extending across the globe as the past murmurs through the now. The tale starts not with creation, but with unearthing. In 1849, British diplomat Austen Henry Layard discovered pieces of uneven tablets near the old city of Nineveh amid the rubble of fallen libraries. He uncovered something that shouldn't have been there, a chronicle naming kings who reigned prior to the Great Flood, their terms extending tens of thousands of years. The record was methodical, official, even composed in the identical tallying manner used for grain stockpiles and temple stocks. It was known as the Sumerian King List, and it began with phrases that still disrupt the chronology we've built for ourselves. After kingship came down from heaven, kingship resided in Eridu. Not created, not captured, not achieved, descended. The tablet didn't portray humans seizing power for the initial time. It showed them accepting a position that pre-existed, handed from rulers whose names stood beside improbable lengths of rule. One king for 43,200 years, another for 36,000. For over a century, scholars have attempted to dismiss those figures as metaphor, as exaggerated symbolism, as copying mistakes. But the scribes didn't handle them as metaphor. They noted these reigns in the same manner they employed to quantify barley and tally livestock. No mythical flourish, no godly verse, just names, cities, and spans, listed as if transcribing from an archive they considered accurate. And then came the flood. The list denotes it plainly, a boundary separating one era from the next. Once the waters withdrew, kingship came back. But the figures altered. Rulers after the flood had lifespans of mortals. The manner shifted from vast management to earthly rule. Something had concluded. Something had vanished. When archaeologists dug up the cities named in the King List, Eridu, Shuruppak, they discovered tangible signs of devastating flooding around 2900 BC, strata of pure silt breaking up habitation remnants, reconstruction atop prior bases. The flood wasn't a mythical expedient, it was a fact in the layers. But this is where the quiet starts to buzz with suggestion. The cities reconstructed post-flood weren't basic reboots. They preserved sophisticated irrigation setups, alignments with astronomy, mathematical structures rooted in base 60 numeration, the identical system that regulates our time measurement still. Writing emerged not as rough images striving for words, but as a completely developed script able to document law, healing, and motions of planets. In one temple collection at Nippur, diggers uncovered managerial texts outlining the reconstruction of holy buildings. Amid the consecration engravings, a line surfaced that alters all. This is the revival of what existed prior. Revival, not establishment, not novelty. Revival. The term suggests recollection. It suggests patterns. It suggests that what we term civilization's origin might have seemed to its builders an effort of rebuilding. Pause with that idea briefly. Picture yourself as a scribe in ancient Uruk, imprinting reeds into moist clay under the shade of a ziggurat that ascends in terraced levels toward the heavens. You're noting a king's edict, but your instruction didn't arise from trial. It stemmed from duplicating older tablets, which were themselves duplicated from even more ancient ones. Your schedule splits the year by lunar phases computed with exactness. Your math can foresee eclipses. Your healing documents outline operative methods. And when you ponder where this wisdom originated, your instructors say it was bestowed, not uncovered. Bestowed by whom? The texts identify them: Anu, Enlil, Enki, Ninhursag. In Sumerian accounts, these entities aren't remote makers existing in vagueness. They are overseers, arbiters, timers, distributors of cities and territories. The words depicting them miss the awe of adoration. It sounds more like officialdom, functionaries managing regions, resolving conflicts, setting rules. The Anunnaki, in the oldest Sumerian origins before subsequent legends overlaid godhood on them, the Anunnaki show as stewards of an ordered realm. They don't enact wonders, they distribute assets. They don't evoke songs, they proclaim orders. And then, following the flood, they retreat. Not annihilated, not toppled, merely gone. And humanity proceeds solo, directed only by the recollection of a system they think wasn't initially theirs to form. This isn't the tale of gods as we envision gods. This is the tale of legacy, of civilizations that never asserted to be initial, but only to be what endured. From Sumer to Egypt, from the Indus Valley to Mesoamerica, societies outline the same sequence: a prior era of non-human oversight, a disastrous split, and humanity reconstructing afterward. What varies are the titles. What stays steady is the recollection of sequence. So the query arises softly, like dust resettling post-dig. If humans didn't create civilization, then who did the ancients think governed before them? The response starts in a museum cellar in Istanbul, where a clay prism smaller than a wine bottle resides behind strengthened glass. It was unearthed in 1906 by German archaeologist Hermann Hilprecht, interred beneath the ruins of Nippur's temple library. The prism's 4 faces hold 18 columns of cuneiform script, a full rendition of the Sumerian King List, transcribed around 2100 BC from origins the scribe labeled as antique. When Hilprecht initially deciphered the starting lines, he supposedly remained quiet for several minutes, unsure if he'd erred. Because the script didn't depict the start of human governance, it depicted its renewal. The wording is eerily exact. Before cataloging mortal kings with familiar reign spans, 23 years, 18 years, 36 years, the scribe documents something wholly different: 5 cities, 8 rulers, reign durations that cover ages: 28,800 years, 36,000 years, 43,200 years. Then one sentence splits the whole account. Then the flood swept over. After that line, all transforms. Cities reconstruct. Fresh dynasties arise. But the reign spans revert to human measure. The vast oversight concludes. What ensues is identifiable history: imperfect kings, brief terms, dynastic conflicts. But what preceded bears the gravity of something the scribe couldn't fabricate and wouldn't reject. This isn't legend cloaked as history. This is history laboring to safeguard something it received but couldn't wholly clarify. When archaeologists launched organized digs across southern Mesopotamia in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, they anticipated discovering the slow progression of civilization: rough hamlets gradually turning into villages, villages into towns, basic into intricate. That's how advancement is meant to function. Instead, they uncovered Uruk. The city materialized in the dig record around 3,500 BC as if emerging from obscurity, entirely shaped. 6-mile protective walls built from millions of mud bricks. The White Temple ascending on a 40-foot-high platform, its corners oriented to cardinal points with surveyor's accuracy. Cylinder seals showing elaborate religious imagery, administrative tablets, logging grain allocation, work duties, and tribute fees in a script already advanced enough to manage abstract ideas. There was no learning curve, no signs of trial. The pottery was wheel-made and produced in bulk. The buildings were grand and geometrically refined. The administration was educated and structured. Archaeologist Samuel Noah Kramer, who devoted decades to translating Sumerian tablets, termed it history's first abrupt civilization. The term itself exposes the unease. Civilizations aren't supposed to emerge abruptly, yet one did, posing more queries than the scholars who revealed it knew how to resolve. The tablets themselves heightened the oddity. They weren't informal logs or private diaries. They were repositories, thousands upon thousands of clay records hardened by fire to defy time, meticulously kept in temple libraries and managerial hubs. Whoever devised this script grasped transience. They knew stone wears away, wood ignites, and memory dims. So they selected clay, plentiful and everlasting when baked right. And they inscribed as if safeguarding something that might otherwise vanish eternally. One tablet from Nippur, labeled CBS 10673, holds a hymn to the goddess Nisaba, guardian of writing and grain. The hymn doesn't laud writing as a fresh human feat. Instead, it portrays Nisaba as having unlocked the house of learning and disclosed the Me, a Sumerian idea denoting the core principles ruling civilization, which predated human application. The Me weren't created. They were uncovered, or more precisely, recalled. Another text from the same repository details the Me: kingship, priesthood, truth, descent to the underworld, ascent from the underworld, the craft of metalwork, the craft of leatherwork, the craft of construction, wisdom, fear, strife, victory, counseling, judgment, decision-making, over 100 essential components of civilized life, each handled not as something humans evolve via trial and error, but as something already finished, awaiting access. The emotional note is clear: retrieval, not creation. And then there's the astronomy. In 1881, Jesuit scholar Joseph Epping started translating a set of clay tablets from Babylon that logged Venus's movements over 21 years. The records were linked to King Amisaduka's reign around 1650 BC, but the precision hinted at far older origins. The tablets forecasted Venus's emergences and vanishings with accuracy demanding centuries of unbroken tracking, following patterns recurring only every 584 days, computing retrograde paths, marking heliacal risings. This wasn't basic sky watching, this was calculated astronomy. The Sumerians partitioned the sky into the zodiac we use today. They figured the lunar month to within seconds of current measures. They recognized the orbital times of visible planets and encoded them in a sexagesimal system, base 60, which directs our splitting of hours into minutes, minutes into seconds, circles into 360 degrees. Where did that system originate? Not from finger counting, not from natural growth. It surfaced whole, woven into the earliest math tablets employed for tasks from field surveying to eclipse prediction. It seems less like creation and more like legacy from a society that grasped profound time. And perhaps most disturbing, the Sumerians never asserted to be first. In temple base inscriptions, kings portray their construction efforts not as unique inventions, but as revivals. I reconstructed the temple as it stood in olden days. I restored the holy building to its prior splendor. Even at their seeming birth moment, they spoke as if reclaiming what had existed. The term they used frequently was gibil, to renew, to revive, to render as it was before. Before what? That query lingers in the quiet between dig strata, in the divide between the unattainable rain spans and the mortal lines that succeeded, in the exactness of wisdom that surfaced without forerunner. The Sumerians erected their cities atop older tells, man-made hills shaped from centuries of crumbled dwellings. Beneath Uruk, archaeologists uncovered 18 separate habitation layers reaching back past 5000 BC. Beneath Eridu, the city the King List designates as kingship's initial seat, excavators revealed temple bases, constructed and reconstructed 16 times, each fresh building precisely positioned atop the remnants of the previous, as if upholding an uninterrupted holy geometry over thousands of years. Someone preceded. The ground recalls even if the names are lost. And if the Sumerians were receiving rather than creating, if they were recollecting rather than uncovering, then the query turns inevitable. Who were the rulers they thought oversaw this world before human kings assumed the throne? In the Oriental Institute at the University of Chicago, a small clay tablet marked WB 444 lies in temperature-regulated storage. It spans about 4 inches high, 3 inches wide, compact enough to grasp easily in one palm. The face is etched with wedge marks from a reed tool sometime around 2000 BC. Unlike grand royal stones or temple offerings, this tablet is managerial, a roster, a log, the sort a functionary might reference when confirming authority's chain. It opens with the line that has vexed historians for over a century, Nam Lugal Anetu de Tuba in Sumerian. This renders straight as when kingship was lowered from heaven. Not founded by humans, not gained via conquest, not passed from mortal forebears, lowered, as if rulership pre-existed any earthly claim, dwelling somewhere above until it descended to the first city. The scribe who imprinted these words into clay wasn't composing verse. The tablet proceeds in the same even managerial tone seen in Mesopotamian bookkeeping, lists of grain reserves, temple inventories, land surveys. Yet woven into this official speech is a claim that upends all we presume about political power's source. The King List views kingship as a role predating its holders. After stating that kingship descended from heaven, the text promptly names where it arrived, Eridu, the initial city, and it identifies the first holder, Alulim. Then it logs his reign span, 28,800 years. The figure rests there on the clay, squeezed between the city's name and the next king's, as factual as a crop sum. No clarification, no caveat, just a length so impossibly vast it compels a decision. Either reject the whole record as fancy, or acknowledge the scribes noted something they held as truly factual, even if its sense has turned unclear over ages. The second king, Alalgar, ruled 36,000 years. The third, Enmenluana, 43,200 years. 5 cities, 8 kings, reign length spanning geological times, noted in the same detached style used for sheep counts and barley measures. Then the flood comes, indicated with the same official conciseness. The flood swept over. After the flood had swept over, when kingship was lowered from heaven, kingship was in Kish. The phrasing echoes the opening exactly, kingship lowered from heaven. But now it occurs again, as if the roll had been pulled back amid the disaster and then re-established later. What returns, though, is basically changed. The first post-flood king, Gor, ruled 1,200 years, still impossibly extended by human norms, but a sliver of pre-flood spans. His successor, Gulani-Daba Anapad, ruled 960 years. The figures keep dropping through later lines until, by the list's reach to verifiable kings like Gilgamesh, reign lengths settle to human scales, 21 years, 36 years, 15 years. The shift is steady but clear. Something altered post-flood. The vast management waned. Mortality reclaimed itself. Scholars have suggested many accounts for these numbers. Perhaps they stand for dynastic sums rather than single reigns. Perhaps they're emblematic, encoding star cycles or mythical periods. Perhaps later scribes amplified prior reigns for holy prestige. But none explain the exactness of the recordings nor the orderly decline. If the numbers were solely symbolic, why the precise math progression? If they were political hype, why deliver them in such plain, undecorated speech? The scribe provides no remarks, no godly interference tale, no wondrous happenings, validating the impossible lengths. Just names, cities, and numbers duplicated from older origins, the scribe himself could no longer wholly situate, but declined to modify. One element shines in the list's framework. Before each pre-flood king, the text employs the Sumerian term lugal, king, but it often couples it with the divinity marker. After the flood, this coupling turns sporadic, then vanishes completely. The role stays identical, the title stays identical, but the essence of its holders moves from divine to human. Kingship didn't alter, the kings did. This isn't a creation legend. Creation legends clarify beginnings via divine deed, gods molding clay, infusing life, uttering worlds into being. The Sumerian King List does none of that. It merely logs succession, as if charting the handover of a managerial role from one regime to another. And when it portrays who wielded power pre-flood, the text sometimes adds further detail. Various King List versions include side notes or matching texts that label these early rulers not just by name, but by group. They are termed Anunnaki, a word appearing thousands of times in Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian works. In later legends, the Anunnaki turn into underworld gods, divine arbiters, cosmic lawmakers. But in the earliest mentions, the term holds a more practical sense. The word divides as Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came, or offspring of Anu. Anu as the sky god embodying cosmic order and power. They aren't depicted with adoration's language. They aren't called in supplications. Instead, they surface in managerial settings, allotting cities, assigning areas, measuring time, founding laws. Their function resembles oversight, not divinity in the spiritual way. One Sumerian text, the debate between winter and summer, portrays the Anunnaki ordaining the farming calendar. Another, the Eridu Genesis, shows them settling humanity's fate pre-flood. In the Descent of Inanna, they convene in judgment as a council. In temple hymns, they're named the great gods who ordain destinies, but the destinies they ordain are earthly, harvest outputs, water claims, territorial lines. The tone is civic management, not cosmic enigma. And here the quiet weighs with suggestion. If kingship was a role that descended from heaven, and if the Anunnaki were the overseers who first held it, then the Sumerian King List isn't logging legend. It is logging a handover of oversight from non-human rulers to human ones, marked by disaster, and measured in the steady shortening of lifespans. The scribes who upheld these lists over centuries handled them as valid historical logs. They duplicated them into royal repositories, cited them in legal quarrels over dynastic lines, and used them to affirm territorial rights. The King List wasn't spiritual writing, it was foundational paperwork which poses the inescapable query: who were the beings claimed to oversee before human kings, and why were they recalled as rulers, not gods? In 1912, University of Pennsylvania archaeologist George Barton released a translation of a clay tablet dug from the ancient city of Lagash. The tablet, from about 2400 BC, held a legal quarrel over water rights between two adjacent temple lands. The text outlined rival claims to an irrigation ditch, summarized witness accounts, and then noted the outcome. At the tablet's base, below the ruling, emerged a single line that felt strangely misplaced in an otherwise ordinary legal matter. The Anunnaki, the great gods, have made this decision binding, not as holy meddling, not as otherworldly enforcement, but as managerial authority, the ultimate appeal court in an official hierarchy. The tablet handled the Anunnaki the way a contemporary document might cite a Supreme Court or ruling council. Their ruling was invoked not because they wrought miracles, but because their scope was accepted as total. This is how the Anunnaki appear in the oldest Sumerian sources, not as worship objects, but as orders agents. The term arises more than 2,000 times across cuneiform writings covering nearly 3 millennia. Yet in the earliest texts, those inscribed before 2000 BC, before ages of mythical elaboration, the Anunnaki are described with striking uniformity. They measure, they decree, they allot, they judge, they oversee the processes by which civilization runs. The instructions of Shurupak, one of the oldest Sumerian wisdom pieces from around 2600 BC, holds practical counsel from a father to his son. Amid advice on honesty, diligence, and elder respect, one line emerges: "The Anunnaki have set your fate. Do not change the water channel. The wording is telling." Setting fate and upholding water channels are spoken in the same vein, as if linked governance acts. Fate here isn't mystic destiny, but civic distribution. Who gets water? Who commands land? Who holds duty for infrastructure upkeep? This is administration's language, not theology. Another text from roughly that era, a temple hymn from Nippur, portrays the god Enlil, foremost among the Anunnaki, as he who makes the hoe and plow plentiful, not via divine spell, but via founding agricultural order. The hymn goes on: "He set the holy measuring rod, roll rod, and measuring line." These are surveying instruments, engineering tools, the sort used to design cities, excavate canals, and partition fields. Enlil's power is depicted through infrastructure. In the Sumerian temple, hymns assembled around 2300 BC, specific Anunnaki linked to particular cities and roles. Enki is lord of Eridu and supervisor of fresh water and wisdom. Ninhursag rules birth and fertility. Nana measures the lunar schedule. Utu oversees justice and trade. These are assignments, authorities. Each Anunnaki manages a sector vital to civilization's function, and the early texts show them wielding that oversight in practical, earthly manners. One cylinder seal from the Uruk era, around 3200 BC, displays a scene that has baffled archaeologists for years. A robed figure stands before kneeling humans, pointing to a diagram seeming to show a city layout or irrigation setup. Above, symbols denote divine power, but the image depicts teaching, instruction, not worship. The figure isn't accepting gifts. The humans aren't bowed in terror. The whole setup suggests knowledge transfer, responsibility delegation. This sequence repeats over hundreds of early texts and items. The Anunnaki, as orders designers who engage humanity not as distant makers, but as active overseers, founding systems humans must then sustain. The Eridu Genesis, one of the oldest flood tales, portrays the pre-catastrophe world as a place where the Anunnaki were born and cities built. It lists 5 cities: Eridu, Bad Tibira, Larak, Sipar, and Shurupak, and assigns each to a specific Anunnaki's care. The text uses Geshur, translating as divine power, but practically closer to administrative duty or role. Each city was a domain, each Anunnaki an overseer. What sets these early references apart from later legend is the lack of supernatural adornment. The Anunnaki don't cast thunderbolts, they don't shift into beasts, they don't fight cosmic beasts. Instead, they allot resources, resolve quarrels, regulate time, and uphold borders between order and chaos. In Sumerian worldview, chaos is shown by Abzu, the underground waters, and Tiamat, the salt sea, both forces to be controlled, directed, and measured for civilization's sustainment. Enki's main role is oversight over the Abzu, ensuring fresh water flows via canals instead of flooding homes. This is hydraulic engineering cast in cosmic terms. The line between legend and memory grows hard to pinpoint. Consider the debate between sheep and grain, a Sumerian text personifying farm resources as deities. The story describes a time before sheep and grain, when humans knew not bread-eating and walked on all fours grazing grass. Then the Anunnaki make sheep and grain, instructing humans to weave, bake, and cultivate. Stripped of personification, The text outlines domesticated agriculture's introduction, the shift from hunter-gatherer life to settled farming. The Anunnaki are credited not with life's creation, but with its organization into productive setups. They are innovators, perhaps engineers possibly, but always in these early texts they are present, active, earthly. Then something shifts. The Atrahasis epic from around 1800 BC, but pulled from older origins, describes a divine order crisis. Humanity multiplies uncontrollably. Civilization's noise disturbs the Anunnaki. Enlil orders a solution, flood. But here's the key detail often missed. The flood isn't penalty for human wrongdoing. It's shown as a practical step to ease population strain. The speech is managerial, even starkly pragmatic. And after the waters subside, the Anunnaki don't resume direct oversight. Instead, they set new limits. Human lifespans shorten. Fertility curbs. A divide forms between divine overseers and human masses. The text portrays this as a pact, a bargained agreement between parties unable to coexist closely anymore. The Anunnaki retreat, not in demise, not in loss, but in intentional parting, stepping away from active oversight and leaving humanity to sustain the systems they founded. Later texts, Babylonian, Assyrian, and retellings, transform the Anunnaki into underworld deities, cosmic arbiters, and abstract fate forces. The practical details dim, the legend thickens. By the time these tales reach Greek and Roman interpreters, the Anunnaki are unrecognizable, shrunk to planetary gods and astrological signs. But the earliest origins recall them differently, as governors who measured time, allotted land, regulated water, established law, and taught farming, as administrators of an ordered world who, for reasons the texts strain to express, could no longer stay present. The Sumerian King List marks the shift clearly. After the flood, kingship descends from heaven again, but now it belongs to humans. The reins return to mortal scale. The cosmic administration ends. What the texts safeguard is not the Anunnaki's arrival moment, but their departure moment, leaving cities, laws, calendars, and a lingering sense that the world was once governed more carefully than now. If the Anunnaki once ruled openly, what event signaled their governance's end? In 1929, British archaeologist Leonard Woolley was digging Ur's Royal Cemetery when his team hit something unforeseen below the graves. A layer of clean water-deposited silt, 11 feet thick, barren and even, with no pottery fragments, no ash, no human dwelling signs. Below this empty level lay an earlier settlement's ruins, crushed mud brick walls, fallen roofs, pieces of painted pottery from a vanished style. Above the silt, civilization resumed. Below it, an older world ceased. Woolley wired the British Museum with a headline-making message: "We have found the flood." The assertion was bold, perhaps overly so, but the material proof was irrefutable. Around 2900 BC, a massive inundation had entombed the ancient city under sediment from huge water flow. The layer was too deep for seasonal floods, too uniform for local effect, and, crucially, it marked a sharp break in material culture. What followed differed from what preceded. Woolley's find wasn't unique. At Kish, digs showed a similar flood layer 18 inches thick, timed to the same era. At Shuruppak, where the Eridu Genesis says flood hero Ziusudra ruled as king, archaeologists found violent inundation signs interrupting habitation around 2900 BC. At Uruk, layer analysis revealed a settlement continuity gap, matching widespread flooding over the Mesopotamian plain. The geological record affirmed what clay tablets said for 4,000 years. The flood wasn't metaphor, it was in the strata. But here the ancient texts veer sharply from later views. The Sumerian flood stories, the Eridu Genesis, and the fragmentary deluge tablet from Nippur portray the event not as divine penalty for human evil, but closer to ecological disaster. The gods don't rage against sin, they discuss policy. In the Atrahasis epic, Enlil suggests the flood because humanity's noise is unbearable, not morally wrong, but literally upsetting cosmic order. The fix is presented as practical, even official. Cut population, restore equilibrium, reset the setup. There's no moral curve, no redemption story. Just governance's cold reason facing unsustainability. The surviving hero, called Ziusudra in Sumerian, Atrahasis in Akkadian, Utnapishtim in later Babylonian forms, is warned by god Enki, who seems to act beyond Enlil's power. Enki directs the hero to construct a vessel, seal it with bitumen, and fill it with living representatives. The directions are exact, technical, the details needed for a real waterproof craft. When the flood hits, the text describes it not with thunder and holy anger, but with quiet. For 7 days and 7 nights the storm swept the land. The great gods watched in dismay, not fulfillment, not just verdict. The Anunnaki are shown observing the destruction they ordered. But the tone hints regret more than justification. One part in the Atrahasis epic shows goddess Ninhursag crying as she sees the wiping out of cities she aided in founding. This isn't the flood of later biblical lore, where divine fairness purges a tainted world. This is desertion, retreat, an era's close not through moral need but through figured choice. And when waters recede, something core has changed. The Eridu Genesis shows Ziusudra giving sacrifice post-flood. The Anunnaki take the offering, but don't restart direct rule. Instead, the text logs a covenant, a formal pact setting new borders. Humanity continues, but under altered terms. Lifespans shorten, divine human closeness reduces. The world manages remotely. The Sumerian King List seizes this shift with math exactness. Pre-flood, 8 kings, impossibly long reigns, direct divine management. Post-flood, kingship lowered from heaven again, but to human rulers whose lifespans drop orderly through lines. Kish's first post-flood king, Gaur, ruled 1,200 years, still superhuman, but a portion of pre-flood lengths. His dynasty's reigns fell steadily, 960 years, 840 years, 720 years. By Uruk's first dynasty, lengths drop to double digits. By verifiable kings, numbers are fully human, 18 years, 36 years, 25 years. The progression suggests not mythical hype, but a steady return to mortal limits, as if some life-extending quality faded slowly, waning with removal from the pre-flood era. What scribes logged wasn't fancy, but recollection of a crossed threshold. Pre-flood, one set of conditions. Post, another. The flood layers tell of abrupt violence, then steady rebuilding. Above Woolly's sterile silt, the city started anew. New bases laid straight over the flood deposit, but matching prior structures' orientations. Streets followed the same paths. Temple platforms ascended on the same holy soil. The emerging city wasn't a new beginning, it was reconstruction, aligned carefully with the buried model. At Eridu, excavators found something more telling. Below the earliest seen temple, archaeologists' Temple 1, lay 15 older ones, stacked one atop another, each ruined and rebuilt sequentially. The lowest, dated pre-5000 BC, showed the same plan as the topmost. Central shrine, offering table, altar, facing the same way. Across nearly 3,000 years and 16 versions, the design stayed constant. Each generation reconstructed what was lost, adhering to a pattern deemed original, sacred, and not theirs to change. This is legacy, not novelty. Memory kept through repetition, even when the memory's source faded past recall. The flood didn't erase knowledge. It broke transmission. What endured were pieces, tablet sets hardened by fire, buried deep against looters, archived in temple bases where later scribes found and copied them into fresh sets. The Sumerians portray themselves as rediscoverers of pre-written things, translators of texts already archaic, interpreters of directions they obeyed without full grasp. One post-flood text, a Lagash temple dedication, includes a recurring phrase in rebuilding engravings. I have restored it per the old writings. Not I built as I chose, not I enhanced the past, but per the old writings. Authority flows rearward toward sources predating the builders, toward wisdom seen as legacy over feat. The flood, in this view, wasn't world's end. It was an administration's end. The physical realm continued, waters ebbed, seeds grew, animals came back, but the oversight structure fell. The Anunnaki, whether actual overseers or symbols of lost order, didn't return to active rule. They retreated into shadows, becoming, when the flood hits, the text describes it, not with thunder and holy anger, but with quiet. For 7 days and 7 nights, the storm swept. Arbiters over governors, watchers over designers. Humanity maintained systems it hadn't devised, following plans it could duplicate but not remake. And in that shift lies a lingering query the texts keep but can't resolve. If the flood ended direct rule, how did humans reconstruct a world they thought wasn't originally theirs? In the Baghdad Museum, before recent decades' turmoil scattered its holdings, stood a brick distinct from archive others. Recovered from Babylon's Enigmatic ziggurat foundation, the structure Greek historians named Babel's Tower. The brick bore a cuneiform engraving from King Nebuchadnezzar II, dated around 600 BC, and the text was surprisingly exact. I have rebuilt the Anunnaki to its ancient height. I elevated its summit to heaven as in former times. Not I have built, not I have made something grand, but as in former times. Nebuchadnezzar, ruling a mighty empire, described his top architectural feat as restoration. And below that brick, archaeologists found proof he spoke truth. Layers of older bases descending through millennia. Each version built atop prior ruins, following the same 7-tier plan, same alignment, same holy ratios. The ziggurat wasn't Nebuchadnezzar's creation. It was his legacy, and he expended vast resources matching a template, ancient even then. This sequence repeats in every major Mesopotamian city, building as recall, architecture as archaeology. The oldest foundation engraving found comes from Enmebaragesi, king around 2100 BC, carved in a limestone slab buried under Ur's great ziggurat. The text details his building. After the flood waters swept over, when kingship lowered from heaven, I rebuilt Nana's temple, as from distant days. The wording is cautious. Enmebaragesi doesn't claim ziggurat design. He claims replicating something from distant days, pre-flood, pre-dynasty, pre-any verifiable king. Excavations under the ziggurat affirmed his tale. Deep below Enmebaragesi's platform, archaeologists found older mud brick ones, each dismantled carefully and woven into later structure. Builders didn't just stack new atop old ruins. They dug, measured, preserved ancient alignments before ascending. This wasn't remodel, it was duplication. And the accuracy was remarkable. The great ziggurat's corners aligned to cardinal directions with under 1 degree error, a feat needing advanced star observation and surveying. Its base measures follow ratios recurring in Mesopotamian builds, same proportions at Eridu, Nippur, Uruk, not from cities copying neighbors, but all copying something older. At Eridu, the pattern grows more vivid. When Iraqi archaeologists dug the city in the 1940s, they expected usual sequence, modest starts evolving to monumental. Instead, they found defying development logic. Temple 16, deepest and oldest, was small but architecturally advanced, rectangular shrine with offering niches, altar platform, central sacred fire hearth. Radiocarbon dated around 5400 BC, older than first dynasties, writing known kingship. Above, Temple 15 on exact same plan, slightly bigger. Above that, Temple 14, again same design, expanded proportionally. This persisted through 18 building phases over 3,000 plus years. Each temple richly buried under clean sand pre-next build. Each kept same orientation, internal setup, altar position. Only scale changed. Temples enlarged over time, but sacred geometry constant. By historical period's visible structure, Temple 1, the building was massive platform temple, but below lay 17 older echoes of the first. Someone initially set a pattern, and every later generation upheld it faithfully, even as languages shifted, dynasties rose, fell, original architects faded to prehistory. The ziggurat form embodies this rule. These stepped pyramids ascending in shrinking tiers skyward weren't practical. No storage, defenses, living spaces. Massive effort, millions mud bricks, decades building, whole populations rallied, yielded structures solely symbolic. Called enigmatic in Sumerian, House of Heaven and Earth's Foundation. The name shows purpose, not king monuments or god tributes, but architectural ties between earthly and cosmic order, physical depictions of a worldview mirroring heaven-earth as domains needing link. The Enuma Elish, Babylonian creation epic, states this clearly. After cosmic order, God's command, "Let us build a shrine, a recess for his abode. When we arrive, we shall find rest therein." The ziggurat was heavenly template's earthly match, and if that template first existed divine, every earthly ziggurat was by nature a copy, upkeep, not invention. Astronomical alignments strengthen this. Ziggurat's corners mark cardinal points, with calculation requiring precision. At Uruk, White Temple atop platform oriented 15 degrees off cardinal north, an angle matching ancient city grid exactly, suggesting whole urban plan followed preset star framework. At Babylon, Etemenanke's 7 tiers linked to 7 classical planets, each level colored per planetary symbol, black for Saturn, white for Jupiter, red for Mars. Not decor choice, cosmological mapping, rendering celestial ranks into building form. But here's the troubling query. How did earliest builders know these? Oldest ziggurats predate advanced math, written astronomy, surviving surveying records for such accuracy. Yet alignments embed from monumental architecture's start. Either builders held knowledge beyond archaeological suggestions or copied inherited templates from earlier, more refined source. One inscription from Lagash's Ningirsu temple, dated around 2050 BC, describes King Gudea getting the design in dream. Goddess Nidaba appears holding lapis lazuli tablet with temple plan, instructs build per shown pattern. Often read as mystic vision, divine spark, but literally it's pre-existing architectural knowledge transmission via inherited docs. Blueprints kept from prior time, sacred because origin unknown. Gudea doesn't invent. He consults, measures, replicates. When temple done, he engraves foundation with recurring phrase, "I have made it as in ancient days." The cities themselves laid per this rule. Uruk's street grid, residential areas, Nippur's temple district, all follow geometries fully formed in earliest layers. No visible trial/error in digs, no gradual urban refinement. Cities emerge organized, as if per plans predating construction. At Nippur, excavators found revealing clay map dated around 1500 BC, showing city layout, parks, gates, temples, canals, marked exactly. But map includes long-gone structures, buildings ruined in old conflicts, buried neighborhoods. Map didn't document current reality, preserved ideal form, memory of city arrangement, even if later generations couldn't uphold perfection. This defines Mesopotamian civilization, not ambition to exceed past, but discipline to keep it. Every brick aligned with ancient bases, Every temple rebuilt on holy ground, every ziggurat rising in tears mirroring cosmic order, whole civilization structured around principle that most vital was already set. Humanity's role, not innovate, but recall, to sustain what was given. But that poses the query texts can't answer. Where did rebuilding knowledge originate? In the British Museum, Catalogue K160 is a clay fragment smartphone-sized, excavated mid-19th century from Ashurbanipal's Nineveh Library, part of millennia-spanning knowledge collection. Tablet a math text dated around 1800 BC, copied from sources scribe calls ancient pre-flood writings. Surface holds geometric problem, rectangle diagonal, via what we call Pythagorean theorem. Solution presented as set fact, not discovery, not math trial result, but established. No proof, no steps, just precise, complete answer, as if scribe copied reference manual whose source he couldn't trace. Below calculation, brief cuneiform, written per old text. Wisdom from Enki's house. Enki's house. God credited with freshwater oversight. Wisdom, Sumerian Namku, craft secrets. Not math's inventor, but keeper. Not knowledge creator, but transmitter. This how Mesopotamian texts portray intellectual bases, as legacy, not novelty. Pattern across all advanced domains. Writing, knowledge preservation tech, attributed to goddess Nisaba. Temple hymns portray her not inspiring human creation, but revealing tablet, opening learning house. Language suggests unveiling pre-existing, awaiting access. One Uruk text, dated approximately 2600 BC, holds prayer to Nisaba, pre-scribal practice. Lady knowing inmost secrets, possessing lapis lazuli tablet. Unlock your wisdom's secrets for me. Lapis lazuli tablet, symbolic fixed knowledge inscribed in stone over clay, knowledge pre-scribe, pre-teachers, pre-writing institution. And indeed, when cuneiform appears archaeologically around 3400 BC, it's systematic, over 1,200 signs for syllables, words, abstracts. No prior stages, no simpler proto-scripts showing growth. System appears functional, used for complex accounting, contracts, records. Linguist Denise Schmant-Besserat suggested cuneiform from clay accounting tokens. But tokens, geometric shapes for grain, animal, oil quantities, appear suddenly around 3500 BC sans, clear priors. Leap from 3D tokens to 2D signs needs abstraction, leaving traces, yet none. System complete. Astronomy same. Amisaduka's Venus tablet, copied around 1650 BC Babylonian reign, records Venus movements precisely. Tracks heliacal rising, setting over 21 years, noting sun disappearances, reappearances. Accuracy needs centuries observation, tracking 8-year cycles, shifting calendar, needing long recognition. But anomaly, observations not recent discoveries. Text states copied from older tablets, first Babylon dynasty around 1900 BC, themselves from earlier. Marginal note, per old observations of Anu and Enlil. Anu Enlil, principal Anunnaki, credited celestial knowledge pre any human king. Scribes not claiming observations. Preserving, passing astronomical data whose origin vanishes prehistory. Mulapin tablets dated around 1000 BC, material millennium earlier, list constellations, star risings, planetary moves. Text describes sky with long familiarity, not pioneers' hesitant maps, but experts' refined catalog upkeep. Math in these texts equally refined. Base 60 sexagesimal, used for time angles, appears sans explanation in earliest Sumerian math tablets. No base 10 precursor, no finger count to abstract shift. System there, operational for fractions, areas, algebra. One Nippur tablet around 2000 BC has compound interest problem, loan growth over years. Solution uses exponentials, concepts needing theory, yet tablet presents formula as common, any trained scribe knows. Medicine same. Esagil Kin Apli's Diagnostic Handbook around 1000 BC, from centuries older, lists symptoms, diagnoses, prognoses, dozens conditions. Describes exams clinically, pulse check, skin color, temperature, excretions. Empirical, systematized, suggesting long polish. Attributes knowledge not recent doctors but Ninurta/Gula, healing deities revealing physician art to humanity. Legal codes clearest. Ur-Nammu's code around 2100 BC, often world's oldest. But prologue undercuts. Ur-Nammu not law author, but restorer. After kingship from heaven, after Anu and Lil gave city to Nana, I set justice per Utu's true word. Utu, sun god of justice, truth. Laws, eternal principles, independent human power. Kings enforce. Ur-Nammu's novelty, reinstating post-chaos. Laws sophisticated. Graduated penalties per offense severity. Intentional, accidental distinctions. Widow, orphan protections. Contract property rules. Not primitive justice evolving fairness. Mature system restored post-break. Agriculture, civilization base, described as gift over achievement. Sumerian Farmer's Almanac around 1700 BC details plowing, irrigation, harvesting, threshing. Opening credits knowledge to Ninurta, giving plow to humanity, teaching seed planting. No trial error, gradual experimental. Presence as received wisdom, correct by pre-farmer instructions. Across domains, consistent stance. Knowledge pre-existed, human hold. Civilization's task, preservation over discovery. Modern tales see progress cumulative, generations building, errors fixed via experience, understanding deepening. But Mesopotamian texts closer to recovery, catastrophe salvaged knowledge fragments, copied to block loss, kept even when context forgotten. Scribes knew, colophons, tablet provenance notes, often copied from old text, let none alter, written per ancient knowledge, may it not vanish. Not innovators' words, confident discoveries, these archivists terrified forgetting. And if knowledge inherited over invented, if math, astronomy, medicine, law gifts from earlier, query inevitable. If inherited, why other civilizations recall same? In Turin's Egyptian Museum, papyrus scroll unrolls nearly 6 feet. Found early 19th century Thieves' Royal Archives, catalogued Turin King List, Ramesses II reign, around 1250 BC. Lists every pharaoh chronologically, from First Dynasty, around 3100 BC backward, but doesn't halt human rulers. Pre-first mortal pharaoh, records earlier, God's reign, Ta 9,000 years, Ra 1,000, Shu, Geb, Osiris, Set, Horus, each centuries. Then Shemsu Horu, Horus followers, semi-divine bridging gods, Jok men. Only post-extended divine chronology transitions to Menes, first recognized pharaoh, documented history start. Papyrus treats sections same, format, formulaic speech, accounting precision. Scribe no distinction, mythological/historical. Both factual succession. Both legitimate governance chain links. Not symbolic genealogy, constitutional paperwork. And Egypt not soul. Across ancient world, oceans millennia apart, civilizations describe same, earlier non-human governed age, catastrophic shift, humanity inheriting diminished world. Consistency unsettling. In Puranas, Hindu texts 300 to 1000 AD from older orals, cosmic time yugas, vast declining order, increasing chaos epochs. Satya Yuga first, 1,728,000 years, perfect dharma, divine presence, God's direct oversight. Humans existed, didn't rule, under Devas administration, celestial maintaining cosmic law, regulating time, teaching sacred sciences. Text portrays age, not paradise, but ordered rule, authority from higher realms, humans knowledge recipients over originators. Then, ages decline, Treta Yuga divine diminishes. Dvapara, further retreat. Current Kali Yuga gods gone, humanity self-governs in moral, spiritual decay, guided fragmentary memories once clear. Structure mirrors, Sumerian King List, divine rule, disastrous shift, human oversight, shadowed greater past. In Mesoamerica, pattern repeats different names, identical logic. Popol Vuh, Quiche Maya creation, multiple failed creations pre-current human. Each prior world non-human-like, wood, mud people, incomplete lacking civilization qualities. Then gods. Quetzalcoatl, feathered serpent teaching astronomy/agriculture/calendar. Quetzalcoatl Aztecs, Viracocha Inca, each teacher god from water/sky, establishing order, instructing civilization arts, departing promising return. Annals of Cuautitlan, 16th century Aztec manuscript pre-Columbian traditions, 5 prior world ages, catastrophe ending. Current 5th sun human age, explicitly temporary, destined end like priors. Striking not mythical content, but historiographic treatment. Aztec chronologies record cosmic ages with dynastic historical, using same dates, tone. Quetzalcoatl reigned not categorically different, later Itzcoatl emperors, both legitimate shaping civilization. In China, pattern again, bamboo annals approximately 300 BC chronology from ancient tomb texts, starts Huangdi Yellow Emperor approximately 2697 BC, but before, lists earlier. 3 sovereigns, thousands years each teaching agriculture/medicine/governance. Fuxi first credited revealing I Ching hexagram cosmology/divination, Shenong herbal medicine/agriculture, Nua marriage/social order, each not inventing but revealing/transmitting pre-human knowledge. Later, Confucian scholars wrestled sovereigns' literal or symbolic cultural developments. Texts refuse distinction, record reigns, accomplishments, treat as historical administrators pre-verifiable dynasties. Even Pacific isolated islands keep similar, Hawaiian Menehune master builders constructing temples, fish ponds, roads, pre-Polynesian. Attributed structures like Kauai's Alikoko fish pond show engineering sophistication, disproportionate known chronology. Maori oral Patupayarehe, pale-skinned advanced knowledge, pre-Polynesian New Zealand, withdrew forests, mountains as settlement grew, leaving presence remnants. Not global myths common-sourced, emerge no-contact cultures, geography, chronology separated, yet share structures suggesting not diffusion but independent preservation, non-human semi-divine governance, advanced knowledge transmission, catastrophic shift, earlier rulers retreat, humanity inheriting uncreated systems. Question, not borrowing, evidence absent. Why independently same narrative? 1. Universal archetypes, humanity projecting authority imagined divine ancestors. But falters specificity, Egyptian Shemsu Horu, not vague, listed reigns, specific nomes, credited persisting institutions, Mahabharata gods, weapons, flying machines, technical detail, less fantasy, more corrupted technology memory authors couldn't replicate. Sumerian tablets, Anunnaki assignments, which governed city domain, not archetypal stories, bureaucratic records, civilizations produced documenting actual structures. If symbolic, why archival rigor as verifiable history? Ancient scribes, priests, historians preserved, didn't categorize mythology, integrated chronologies, referenced legal, territorial, dynastic claims. Treated pre-human rule not metaphor but historical fact documented, and tellingly describe rules end profound loss over liberation. Consistency unsettling. In Puranas, Hindu texts 300 to 1000 AD from older orals, cosmic time yugas, vast declining order, increasing chaos epochs. Satya Yuga first, 1,728,000 years, perfect dharma, divine presence, God's direct oversight. Humans existed, didn't rule, under Deva's administration, celestial maintaining cosmic law, regulating time, teaching sacred sciences. Egyptian texts mourn God's departure, Hindu Puranas declining yugas, nostalgic divine governance. Mesoamerican anticipate Quetzalcoatl return, absence, abandonment. Biblical reframes earlier monotheistic preserves memory, heaven, earth closer, divine among humans, proximity, catastrophe, ended. Not humanity seizing destiny triumphantly, inheritance, remembrance, maintaining given weight. If pattern global preserved independently isolated cultures, either universal need imagined divine prehistory or memory predates divergence, echoing older than remembering cultures. Texts can't answer, but preserve query uncomfortable consistency. If memory's symbolic, why ancient peoples treated historical truth. In 1976, linguist Samuel Noah Kramer published overlooked Philadelphia University Museum tablet translation. Tablet Nippur 4486 Eridu hymn, approximately 2500 BC. Most text familiar, praising sacred status, celebrating temples, invoking protection. But one passage halted Kramer. When kingship brought down heaven, Eridu chosen. Anunnaki determining destinies gathered. Anu, Enlil, Enki, Ninhursag, fashioned black-headed people. Fashioned black-headed people repeats Sumerian humanity reference. But text places action historical, after kingship descent, Eridu, identifiable council beings, not cosmic ex nihilo creation, closer establishment organization, shaping existing into governed. Question haunting Mesopotamian scholarship since, simple, unanswerable. Who Anunnaki? Term limited clarity. Linguistically Anunnaki from an heaven, ki earth, Naki, those offspring of. Etymology suggests celestial authority, terrestrial presence beings, not pure divine human, intermediary. Sumerians distinguished, early translations, gods, collapsing conventional religious. But Sumerian Dingir god could celestial bodies, natural forces, deified ancestors, powerful living, not theological, elevated status designation. Anunnaki Dingir, but so successful kings, legendary heroes, personified justice, wisdom. Ambiguity crucial examining ancient understanding. One possibility, Anunnaki deified ancestors, real leaders, accomplishments magnified oral till mythological. Precedent, Egyptian pharaohs deified death, Chinese emperors divine mandate, Roman posthumous gods. If early Mesopotamian rulers, successful dynasties, later elevate pantheon, attributing foundations, wisdom. King List, long reigns, dynastic totals, / cultural memory compressed individuals. Alalim 28,800 years, mean Alalim dynasty epoch, unmeasurable. Pre-flood kings, symbolic era, representatives over literal. Tidy, but struggles textual. Anunnaki never die. No tombs, no cemetery claims remains. Unlike Egyptian, Chinese mortal deaths documented divine proclaimed, Anunnaki withdraw, active to distant judgment, sans biological death. Knowledge astronomy / math / law / architecture too systematically for random myth remembered brilliance. Second, Anunnaki lost elite culture, sophisticated predating, coexisting Sumerians, catastrophe destroyed. Accounts sudden advanced sans development, flood not end all human, destroyed specific whose survivors, transmitted fragments, rebuilders. Anunnaki cultural memory lost elite, remembered gods, inheritors, older tradition, post-flood replicate not equal. Archaeological ambiguous, pre-flood Eridu / Uruk, layers architectural sophistication, disproportionate population. Astronomical precision centuries measurement, math institutional education untraceable. But no distinctive elite culture, no separate burials, pottery discontinuity beyond flood layers. Third, Anunnaki mythic memory governance, symbolic personifications, abstract civilization principles, Enki hydraulic water management, Enlil atmospheric agricultural, Ninhursag birth biological, each conceptual over individual, humanity organizing, transmitting technical pre-systematic science. Psychological appeal, personify abstracts, justice blind, fortune fickle, death reaper. Anunnaki cognitive tools conceptualizing, yet can't account bureaucratic text specificity. Tablets list Anunnaki city governance, administrative decisions, councils resolving practical. Language resists symbolic. Symbols don't meet decide water rights. Metaphors, not legal precedents. Texts, actions, not attributes. Truth, perhaps impossible certainty. Sumerians 4,000 years ago already copying described older. By readable accounts, Anunnaki transitioned presence to memory, whatever, deified / lost / symbolic / evidence unaccommodating, Sumerians no direct answer access, had inheritance, tablets from tablets, temples, ancient foundations rebuilt, laws enforced eternal, civilization around principle greatest achievements past. And perhaps matters most, not Anunnaki identity, but belief shaping all followed. If believe laws given wiser beings, not casually alter. If cities' cosmic models maintain sacred precision. If knowledge inherited earlier, focus preservation over innovation. Anunnaki, literal, symbolic, constitutional authority, legitimacy transcending king dynasty. Answer why govern this. Because before, given, heirs not founders. Belief persisted millennia. Nebuchadnezzar Babylon, rebuild 6th century BC, described restoring Anunnaki established. Assyrian kings conquered justified restoring Anunnaki divine order. Memory outlasted empires. Persistence suggests question, not Anunnaki real, but civilization around inherited authority consequence, becomes conservative deepest, dedicated conservation, maintaining given, preventing loss. Innovation, not bold tradition departure, careful ancient interpretation, understanding ancestors, progress recovery, discovery remembrance. Humanity lives not destiny creators, but older stewards passing forward even original meaning dim. What means live world believe inherited not created? In 1986, archaeologist Separ uncovered clay tablet deliberately buried foundation deposit temple wall. Dated 550 BC, late Mesopotamian, past Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, Assyrian. Inscription brief ceremonial, typical cornerstone commemorate, but one line disrupted. I sought old foundation built upon. Discovered ancient writings followed exactly nothing lost. King Nabonidus not celebrating innovation, confessing anxiety, concern essential slipping, older knowledge connection fraying, primary duty not surpass past but prevent disappearance. By 6th century BC, Mesopotamian 3,000 plus years. Yet near-end continuity, king defined legitimacy archaeology, excavating older, copying texts. True authority buried past accessed fragments, not height confidence, posture inheritors, decline managing, and perhaps always. If view Mesopotamian not singular, long recoveries sequence, different pattern, not progress complexity, cycles knowledge rising / catastrophe, striking / fragments, salvaged rebuild. Archaeological bears, post-2900 BC flood layers, cities rebuilt, writing re-emerged, Chak temples ancient foundations. But centuries early, dynastic warfare, fragmentation, collapse. Akkadian conquest unified briefly, pre-owned 2200 BC collapse, drought climate. Third Dynasty restored 2100 BC, fell century invasion internal. Each recovery older sources, copying texts, restoring temples, invoking Anunnaki, legitimized dynasties. Knowledge not smooth accumulate, resurged, faded, resurged. One old Babylonian approximately 1800 BC tablet scribal lament, old writings damaged, ancient knowledge dims, copy what understand preserve cannot. Scribe acknowledging even time, ancient U.S., much lost. Working sources not fully interpret, preserving mechanically authority, recognized meaning obscure. Pattern defines post-flood, custodianship poorly understood inheritance. Consider preserved millennia, math tablets solving Renaissance reemerge Western, astronomical planetary centuries, medical empirical systematic, legal individual social philosophical. None steady linear, appears persists, copying expands, contracts collapse, revived stability, trajectory not upward, wave cresting, breaking, reforming backward looking. Hammurabi Laws approximately 1750 BC prologue, restoring justice old days. 7th century BC Nineveh Library, dispatched scholars empire find copy ancient, prioritizing preservation. Civilization assumed highest wisdom past. But haunting, if knowledge lost completely, generations preserve ununderstood texts, what lost pre-first tablet? Sumerian King List begins kingship heaven descending, not precede. Eridu Genesis Anunnaki, order creating, not pre-chaos, explain. Always earlier stratum texts reference can't access. Temple deposits tablets restorations pre-flood structures, no plan survive era. Medical site ancient practice, experiment stocks observations absent. Earliest sources point backward older, suggests Sumerian perhaps recovery, earlier order reconstruction details, fading first cuneiform. If true, human history starts not beginning, middle longer story. What pre-writing? Texts, knowledge given, laws heaven descended, me pre-human practice. Whether literal earlier culture, transmission, symbolic lost phase, evidence unaccommodate, belief shaped, followed. Mesopotamian not conquest / expansion / innovation, organized around memory, sacred preserve, entrusted / maintain, established / prevent loss. Why ziggurats same form millennia? Math formulas unaltered applications forgotten. Legal ancient authority over royal. Scribes' lives copying tablets older, preserving unclear purpose. Culture not static, adapted challenges, responded invasions, new technologies. But never claimed original, framed recovery, advancement restoration, what was. Perhaps means heirs over founders, not discard given casually, not experiment recklessly undesigned systems, recognize understanding partial, before knowledge unrecovered, responsibility not surpass, transmit remains. Wait visible texts, Assyrian scribes, libraries not boast new, catalog, recovered ancient. Kings dedicate temples, not celebrate innovation, confirm older alignment. Physicians cite authorities generations prehistory, authority backward remote binding, absences, damaged texts, unperformed practices, shaped more than presences. Anunnaki withdrawal created defining vacuum, remembered not present actions, absence meaning, world smoother, juster, clearer, once. Every ritual maintained vanished order connection, every temple divine architecture link, every copied tablet forgetting resistance. Not mythology comforting fires, organized cultural memory constitutional, past permanent government temporary human rulers operated, past always wins. Even empires fell, languages changed, populations displaced, cities abandoned, texts survived, buried deposits, archived libraries, recopied knowledge, outlasted producing civilizations. Perhaps humanity's first role, never mastery, remembrance, not triumphant progress march, patient, uncertain, preserving fragments, ended world unfully understood. Each generation forward inherited, adding could, losing must, hoping next, understand more. And if heirs forgotten world, aftermath age unfully reconstruct, question uncomfortably contemporary. If heirs forgotten world, what future civilizations believe once knew lost?